Dear friends, as we are in the Vesak season, today I am offering that we can be discussing the number 26 in the middle length discourses, which is sometimes called the Noble Quest, or in Pali, the Ayya Sobhana Sutta. In particular, I'm interested in the idea that different suttas tell the same story from a little bit different perspective, or different aspects of the story are emphasized. Consider the possibility that the Buddha is offering his own story of how he obtained his full awakening as an example for us to follow. So it's not just for the sake of history or for the sake of admiring the Buddha or for the sake of an academic purpose, but rather to see if there's something here that speaks to us, to our own aspirations and to our own interest in how to obtain the release from dukkha. I'm sharing it here with Bhikkhu Sujata's translation in Sutta Central. I'm going to read and pause from time to time and make some comments, and also invite your comments, what you know, or what you would like to ask about in this sutta. So I have heard at one time the Buddha was saying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. Then the Buddha robed up in the morning and taking his bowl and robe entered Savatthi for alms. Then several mendicants went up to the Venerable Ananda and said to him, Reverend, it's been a long time since we've heard a Dhamma talk from the Buddha. It would be good if we got to hear a Dhamma talk from the Buddha. Apparently, these bhikkhus were visiting from afar. The Buddha stayed at Rajagaha for a lot of the time, and there were many opportunities to hear talks from the Buddha there in Rajagaha. But these bhikkhus have not heard a talk in a long time. There's a bit of a story theme about that gets repeated later on in the story when he was first enlightened, and how he became persuaded that it would be worthwhile to teach the Dhamma. So that's a bit like setting a framework for the story. Then Ananda gives a hint. Well then, reverends, go to the Brahmin Ramaka's hermitage. Hopefully you'll get to hear a Dhamma talk from the Buddha. Yes, Reverend, they replied. The implication here is that Ananda will suggest to the Buddha the possibility of giving a talk in this location. We don't know anything much at all about Brahmin Ramaka. He doesn't appear in other places in the suttas, but this particular sutta, part of the way it's framed, is the comparison of what the Buddha taught compared to what the Brahmin teachers knew about before him. So there's different ways in which it's a parallel between the two systems of teaching. We know that when the Buddha, as part of his skillful means, spoke to people in terminology that was familiar to them, and would take something that they already know from what's familiar and then raise that knowledge up to some kind of a Dhamma application at a higher level. So if he had been speaking to farmers, he could speak to them about farming and get a Dhamma theme from that. If he's speaking to Brahmins, he could speak to them about the Brahmin philosophy and pull a Dhamma teaching out of that. So coming back to the Buddha, after the meal on his return from Amsran, the Buddha addressed Ananda. Come, Ananda, let's go to the eastern monastery, the stilt longhouse of Megara's mother, for the day's meditation. Yes, sir, Ananda replied. The place that's, they used to translate it as a palace. Bhikkhu Sujato translated as a stilt longhouse because he thinks that the special places were not as fancy as a modern palace. So the Buddha went with Ananda to the eastern monastery. In the late afternoon, the Buddha came out of retreat and addressed Ananda, come, Ananda, let's go to the eastern gate to bathe. Yes, sir, Ananda replied. So the Buddha went with Ananda to the eastern gate to bathe. This also is very Indian culture, or very Brahmanical. It was a religious thing to bathe before doing religious things or speaking about the Dhamma. When he had bathed and emerged from the water, he stood in one robe, drying himself. Then Ananda said to the Buddha, Sir, the hermitage of the Brahmin Ramaka is nearby. It's so delightful, so lovely. Please visit it out of compassion. So now he's arranging for those other visiting bhikkhus to get a chance. The Buddha consented with silence. He went to the Brahmin Ramaka's hermitage. Now, at that time, several mendicants were sitting together in the hermitage talking about the teaching. That would be about the Dhamma. The Buddha stood outside the door, waiting for the talk to end. When he knew the talk had ended, he cleared his throat and knocked with the latch. This is so polite. If you would like to be very polite, especially in the monastery, waiting like that. If you see a group of bhikkhus talking to somebody and they're in a conversation, instead of just kind of coming in and elbowing your way in with your question, instead if you stand at the doorway and practice standing meditation and just patiently wait, staying calm and still, and then the teacher will notice you and appreciate how polite you are, and then at the right time they'll invite you to come and join the conversation. The mendicants opened the door for the Buddha. When he entered the hermitage, where he sat on the seat spread out, he addressed the mendicants. Mendicants, what were you sitting talking about just now? What conversation was left unfinished? Sir, our unfinished discussion on the teaching was about the Buddha himself when the Buddha arrived. And he answers, good mendicants, it's appropriate for gentlemen like you who have gone forth in faith from lay life to homelessness to sit together and talk about the teaching. When you're sitting together, you should do one of two things. discuss the teachings, or keep noble silence. So speaking about the Buddha and speaking about the Dhamma are almost one and the same thing, because the Buddha's whole lifetime is an embodiment of the teaching. And now he goes right in with his teachings. He says, mendicants, there are these two quests, the noble quest and the ignoble quest. What's called a quest, the Pali word is pariyasana, which means seeking or searching. And it can be either Arya, noble, or Anarya, not noble. So here already there's been a certain modification of ideas. So the Aryas originally would have been the conquering tribes that came into the north, from the north, and conquered the indigenous people of central India, and became subsequently the ruling class, the warrior class and the Brahmin class, coming from the invading population. So then the Arya had a meaning just referring to that group, and later had the some kind of like a birthright privilege. You could say like a king, or somebody who was born to nobility in our in the European culture, if that's where we're coming from. They were thought to have some kind of a divine anointment as having the privilege to be the king. And that it was passed down by birth. We see in many places in the suttas that the Buddha taught that nobility is not the result of birth, but it's the result of one's behavior. So when the behavior is pure and good, one could be called a Brahmin. And when one makes the breakthrough to wisdom, breaking the cycle of rebirth, one has left the ordinary level and come to the noble level. So that's a completely new definition of what's noble or what's not noble. What is the ignoble quest? It's when someone who is themselves liable to be reborn seeks what is also liable to be reborn, themselves liable to grow old, fall sick, die, sorrow, and become corrupted. They seek what is also liable to these things. And what should be described as liable to be reborn? Partners and children, male and female bondservants, goats and sheep, chicken and pigs, elephants and cattle, and gold and money are liable to be reborn. These attachments are liable to be reborn. Someone who is tied, infatuated, and attached to such things, themselves liable to being reborn, seeks what is also liable to be reborn. So in this case, as we'll see it developed here, that birth, suffering, illness, old age, and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, corruption are all considered as springing from the process of rebirth. Later on in this sutta and elsewhere, there's some mention about sensual pleasures and renouncing sensual pleasures. And I have often noticed that in terms of craving and sensual pleasures, it's we might naturally think of pleasure as being something that's an experience, like listening to some great music or going to a really great party or taking some drugs or alcohol and getting tipsy or falling in love. And these pleasures are in terms of the pleasant sensations that come from it. But you don't particularly think of goats and sheep and chicken and pigs as being pleasurable in anything like the same way, right? So here, I think that really all of these things are not for that kind of experience, but rather for safety. If you're in danger of coming to harm, coming to illness, coming to death, if you are married, that could help protect you from that because your spouse could help you. If you've got children and the children are healthy, and if the children love you, then they can take care of you. When you reach your old age and your weakness and inability, the children can help you. If you've got wealth, built up a lot of wealth in terms of these servants, these cattle and so forth, and having your property, that is all providing a kind of like a buffer of safety. And having gold and money, all the more so, is providing a buffer of safety so that even if some catastrophe befalls you, if you have lots of money, then you could pay to get help to take care of it. And so in this way, I really believe that it's because of the existential anxiety that human beings have, being afraid that our life could be cut off at any time. We are somewhat programmed. An ordinary person who hasn't thought about it very deeply would still innately, they would really want to live. And if they came across some danger or someone is pointing a gun at them or something, they would naturally have a very strong reaction because they want to live. They don't want to die. And so then so much, like it could be like 90% or 100% of the motivation that ordinary people have to all of the things, the activities that we're involved in are trying to learn how to live or how to have a certain level of comfort, having a certain level of safety or insurance policy so that we won't we can minimize how much pain we have to experience, like the pain of hunger or the pain of neediness, the pain of being disrespected, the pain of being hated, the pain of loneliness. We want to be have insurance against those kinds of pains, and in a way, the pleasure of having a big farm with all these animals and servants and family members around is fun, and enjoyable, but a big part of the enjoyment, it's like just on the other side of the rainbow or outside the wall or something, there's a looming danger, like a catastrophe could come. But just for the moment, within our group, so on this hypothetical form, we've gotten our own domain that we can enjoy being prosperous, comfortable, and safe. So then the sutta goes on. What should be described as liable to grow old? Partners and children, male, female bondservants, goats and sheep, chicken, pigs, elephants, cattle, gold, and money, liable to grow old. Here, these attachments are liable to grow old. Someone who is tied, infatuated, and attached to such things, themselves liable to grow old, seeks to what is liable to grow old. And so we become tied down to our things. In order to have them, we have to be like tied down to them. So if you have goats and sheep and chicken and pigs and elephants and cattle, then you have to feed them every morning. You've got to get up early and feed the cows, or you got to milk the cows every day or in the morning. If you have chickens, you got to feed the chickens. You got to worry about whether the wolf is coming in and have a good fence and make sure that the chickens get into their chicken coops so they won't be killed by the fox. If you've got a wife or a husband, then you have to make certain promises and make a commitment to keep those promises in order to keep that relationship going. If you have servants or employees, you have to fulfill your responsibilities to those employees. So it's a mutual. They take care of you and you take care of them. So then being tied, you can't just leave. You have to stay to keep these things going. And so in that way, you become attached as well. Yeah. What should be described as liable to fall sick? Partners and children, male and female bondservants, goats and sheep, chicken, pigs, and elephants and cattle are liable to fall sick. In this case, the sutra does not mention that gold and money are liable to fall sick. So the gold and money are impermanent, as everything is. They can be destroyed. And it says in the commentary that they can get old in the sense of being becoming like tarnished or corrupted. Like if the gold is mixed with tin or something like that, it becomes corrupted. But they say that money can't get sick. Perhaps the modern economists would say that money can be sick. I don't know. What should be described as liable to die? Partners, children, male, female bondservants, goats, sheep, chicken, pigs, elephants, liable to die. These attachments are liable to die. Someone who is tied and infatuated, attached to such things, themselves are liable to die. They seek what is also liable to die. What's liable to sorrow, and what's liable to corruption. So people and animals are liable to sorrow. It said that gold and money are not included as being liable to sorrow, but under corruption are the partners and children, bondservants, goat, sheep, chicken, pigs, elephants, cattle, and gold and money are liable to corruption. And that's because the gold can be mixed with other metals to become corrupted in that way. So these attachments are liable to corruption. Now I'm going to pause here and ask who can give an example of how the happiness of attachment to these materialistic things is also a dukkha. How you can't have the sukha in these things without also having the dukkha. That's not a very difficult question. I know someone can answer.
Hi, Chintana here. Attachment, you are attached to the husband or the animals, and then they're taken away because everything dies. So you grow fond of, you love these things, and then they leave you.
Right.
Or even just getting sick and having to take care of them. That is also dukkha.
Right. And even before they leave you, you have to worry about them. Yeah. What about money? How is the happiness of money mixed with suffering? Okay, I'm calling Sharanya for that question.
Well, if you have it, you're kind of going to worry about losing it.
Mhm.
And then you have to worry about where to keep it, where maybe you won't lose it. But even otherwise, it's likely to lose its value.
Right.
And then when you have money, you're like, well, who's going to get it after I'm gone? And if you don't want the person to get it after you're gone, that's another worry.
Uh-huh. Do my children really love me, or they just want my money? um, do you think that someone could have become, in a way, like morally corrupt if they have too much money? Elena's saying yes. Studies have been done about who obeys the law in traffic. They stay at like a stop sign and see who blows the stop sign and who obeys the stop sign. And they see that very expensive cars are the ones that most often blow the stop sign and disobey the law because there's some kind of a sense of privilege that leads to some kind of a moral laziness, which is another way, a kind of corruption that can come about from money. So we see all of these aspects that you can't separate, that the safety of these things is not really safe. It doesn't solve the first problem, which is the problem of death. And it also brings a whole bunch of new problems, the unintended side effects of having those things.
I had a question. Could I ask now or should I wait till later?
Oh, please ask now.
Yeah, so I mean, we all know the downsides of getting attached to money or just the materialistic pursuit, right? But
Yes.
money is a basic necessity. I mean, living in this conventional world, you definitely need some amount of it to just sustain yourself. So I guess where the difficulty comes is in how much is enough, or, how do you pursue it without being attached to it? Like, I mean, you have to sustain a living at the end of the day. So like you need to work for it, but not be attached to it. I guess that is where the real challenges are. I think
Yeah.
the extremes are very clear, being extremely obsessed or getting corrupt with it and things like that. Those are very straightforward.
Yeah. I believe that in many places, the sutta advised to see the danger in these things. And the more clearly we can see the danger, the more likely it is that we can avoid attachment and craving connected with these things. So then the things of this world, especially the things that a householder is essentially involved with, so to earn one's wealth in a way which is honest and ethical, and then to practice a balance of generosity in the use of one's wealth, are all things that can be done if a householder is aware of the danger of attachment and is like very, very cautious and really doing a lot of self-examination to see whether, is greed creeping in here. And then for those who, in a certain way, you could say that the monastics have the easier, softer path because we have put a distance between ourselves and a lot of these materialistic things. And so in that way, our life is potentially more simplified. And then when it's on a monastic form and greed arises or attachment arises, ego, conceit, those things, if they arise, it's kind of like more obvious because it's more possible to be renounced from those dangers. I'm going to call on Richard and see if he can give a further comment.
Thank you, Ayya. For myself, when analyzing the sutta, I kind of think that gold and silver were added at some later time. I don't think Buddha would have said this because one thing he says it's subject to birth, but he says there's 4 kinds of birth, and none of those have anything to do with making gold or silver coins or something like that. So that's why it doesn't fit into every category too. They had, well, actually, it doesn't really fit here, So not that it's not important to understand not to be attached to gold and silver, but there's other things too in the list, like he talks about elephants and cattle, but he doesn't mention horses, which they were famous for having chariots and everything, and mares. They sometimes it says he was being pulled by 4 white mares and stuff. So the list is not that complete. You can look at the land your home is on, your home, right? Things, structures, your clothes, jewelry, whatever. I mean, there's so many things that could be added in the list. So I don't think it was meant to be an exhaustive list. I think it was meant to be more of a list of things that people might see, village people might see in their, as far as living beings in their everyday life. And
Yeah.
so they can look around and see how people are attached to these type of things, right? You may not see horses too much because that was mostly like the king and the castle and everything, but you would still see elephants because they used elephants as working animals, like tractors, just like you see people driving big tractors and stuff around,
Right.
stuff like that, So anyways, that's kind of like my personal feeling about it. I'm not saying I'm right, but I'm just saying that was my personal analysis. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. I do agree with that, and I think I've read other scholars say that the gold and silver may have been added later. Nevertheless, in this sutta and in many other places, I see sensual pleasure is described in terms of wealth, materialistic wealth. And this is something that I wanted to emphasize because in modern times, we think of pleasure in terms of experiences, but you don't think that, like, if you ride on a roller coaster, that's going to give you a feeling of safety, or if you go to a party, that's going to give you a feeling of safety or something like that. But if you build up your wealth and your family and your relatives and all of that, that could give somebody a sense of safety. And because this sutta is about the ultimate safety, that's the reason why I wanted to draw that aspect of it out. And it certainly is true in modern times that people do think that if they got a lot of money that they would be safe somehow. Was there another hand?
I didn't have my hand up. I was thinking that the gold and silver could have been Buddha talked in similes or taught in similes. And I was thinking the same thing, that gold and silver has quite a bit of energy behind it because that's our wealth, our jobs, our identity.
Yeah.
The other comment I wanted to make is it struck me one day, I never thought attachment to a person could be bad until I started practicing Buddhism. And then I thought, there's all these dangers of being too attached and spoiling, and the pain of that disattachment or detachment is so great. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I just
Okay.
have a quick
Yes, go
comment to make. I
Yes.
noticed Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation adds horses and mares.
Ah, okay. Thank you for that. That could have been added later on in a different. There are different versions of the same sutta. Okay. Whoops. Let me bring myself back. I turned off the wrong spotlight. There we go. Children are attached to parents and parents are attached to children. If there were not a certain amount of attachment, it might not be healthy for the child or the parent. But then it's also necessary as the child matures to detach oneself from that attachment. So if you had a 30-year-old person who was still attached to mommy the way that a baby was attached, you would think that was very sick. So that attachment has to be let go of. If you're in a world where it's more likely that children could die at a young age in childhood or in at a young age, so many disasters could happen, then parents who are wise do prepare themselves for the possibility of losing that child, even while they're still doing their utmost to be attentive and caring and allowing an immature little child to be attached to the parent, which is part of their natural growing up. I'm going to come back to the sutta now. So that's the ignoble quest. What is the noble quest? It's when someone who is themselves liable to be reborn, understanding the drawbacks in being liable to be reborn. This is a very important Pali word here. It's called adinava. I'm pointing to it here. Sometimes it's translated as a danger. Okay. The drawback in being liable to be reborn, they seek that which is free of rebirth, the supreme sanctuary from the yoke, extinguishment. So the supreme sanctuary from the yoke here, anuttara means unsurpassed. Yoga means the yoke. At one time, the earlier root meaning of yoga was something about energy or effort, but then it came to mean a practice, like a disciplined practice that's analogous to the yoke that you put your mule or your horse or your ox into a yoke so that they would pull the plow. And then throughout our life, while we're living in in a marriage, we're in a yoke of responsibility. And when we got all those dependent animals and people who are depending on us, that's a kind of a yoke of responsibility. If we live in a capitalist world where you must work in order to live, and you can't just work for free, you have to work on a paid job to get some money in order to live, then that becomes a kind of a yoke. And then the kema is the security or the safety. So what the Buddha is looking for is the ultimate security or safety from the yoke. And that is an epithet of nibbana, which Bhante Sujato translate as extinguishment. Are themselves liable to grow old, fall sick, die, sorrow, become corrupted. Understanding the drawbacks in these things, they seek that which is free of old age, sickness, death, sorrow, corruption, the supreme sanctuary from the yoke or extinguishment. This is the noble quest. And actually, that is the answer to Smita's question about how in this life we have to earn money and do reasonable things to take care of our money. We have to form a family or have the material things in life and do reasonable ethical things to take care of protecting those things. But in the end, if we really know the danger, we do not want to be reborn as a human being or as an animal again and again and have to keep going around in the same cycle, that we have to go and be a baby again, we have to be a child, we have to be a teenager and go through the agony of being a teenager and the agony of being a student, the agony of working, the agony of having to go to the office day in and day out, year after year in and year out, all the anxiety associated with building our wealth and trying to keep our wealth and trying to protect ourselves, and the agony of parenthood and all of that work and effort and anxiety. If we don't want to go around with this again and again, then we're looking for an end, nibbana. I don't favor those kind of teachings which try to talk their way out of making a rebirth an essential aspect of the Dhamma, which is the tradition that we're in, what's taught by the Buddha. But I do believe that it's also true in two ways. One, it's true in the sense of rebirth and how just tiresome it is to imagine continuing to go around and around forever. And then it's also true in a more psychological sense that whatever we do can very easily become a habit. So if I take a bath and brush my teeth in the morning, and if I do that for a couple of weeks, day in and day out, every day I'm brushing my teeth in the morning, then very quickly it becomes like habitual. It's a very easy, natural thing to do, and it becomes like unnatural to not do so. And so then it becomes very easy to keep on repeating the same thing that has become habitual. If I watch a show that's filled with war and violence, and then I am thinking about war and violence, then it's easy for those kind of thoughts to become habitual. If I read something in the news about something that's hateful to me, and I feel that with the safety of sitting in my own house reading the paper, I can just hate somebody on the other side of the world, and there's no harm done because nobody has to know. But I'm putting the seed of hatred in my own mind, and I'm planting a habit of hatred. And then if I allow myself to have a minute of hatred every day for a couple of weeks, then I will have a pretty strong habit of hatred already planted. And it will be a real danger of being, kind of a calamity if we don't know how to get out of these habits. So part of this stepping off the merry-go-round of samsara, I believe, would be stepping out of having a compulsive, repetitive, compulsive psychological disease that forces us to keep repeating the same things over and over again. But instead of feeling compulsive in that way, the one who has realized Nibbana would experience like a moment-to-moment tremendous freedom of not having any of those kinds of compulsions. So that's would be just I'm not speaking from what I've read from teachers, but it seems that from my own experience that the more one develops wisdom, that something happens, that different levels of attachment break away and fall off, and those attachments don't come back, and one may never again feel compulsive about the same thing in this lifetime. And if we can do that completely, then perhaps we could realize this ultimate freedom sanctuary, our sanctuary, safety from the yoke, our nibbana, the ultimate safety. So this is the noble quest. I'm going to go on through the beginning of the Buddha's quest and then his history. Mendicants, before my awakening, when I was still unawakened, but intent on awakening, this is the word bodhisattva, Bhante Sujato translate as a being who is intent on awakening. I too, being liable to be reborn, sought which is this before my awakening, I sought which is also liable to be reborn. Being myself liable to grow old, fall sick, die, sorrow, become corrupted, I sought what is liable to these things. Then it occurred to me, why do I, being liable to be reborn, grow old, fall sick, sorrow, die, and become corrupted, seek things that have the same nature? Why don't I seek that which is free of rebirth, old age, sickness, death, and sorrow, and corruption, the supreme sanctuary from the yoke, extinguishment? Sometime later, while still with pristine black hair, blessed with youth, in the prime of life, though my mother and father wished otherwise, weeping with tearful faces, I shaved off my hair and beard, dressed in the ochre robe, and went forth from the lay life to homelessness. So at that time, there was a tradition, more than one tradition, of seekers, samanas, who had dropped out of the settled agrarian society, had gone into the forest, either being solitary or staying with groups, seeking wisdom. Some of them went naked Some of them went dressed in white cloth. Some of them went dressed in brown cloth, which we imagine might be something similar to this, depending on the vegetation that was found in that part of the world and what color the cotton could be dyed into. Then at this point, the Bodhisattva doesn't yet know the answer. He said, I set out to discover what is skillful, seeking the supreme state of sublime peace. Then I approached Alara Kalama, and he would have been one of the well-known, advanced, and accomplished spiritual teachers at the time. I said, Reverend Kalama, I wish to lead the spiritual life in this teaching and training. He replied, stay, Venerable. This teaching is such that a sensible person, this is a vinyu, that could be, you could translate that as a wise person, can soon realize their own tradition with their own insight and live having achieved it. What Bhikkhu Sujata translated as their own tradition is Sakang Acharya Kang. So that which is related to their own teacher. Bhante Sujato, in all of his footnotes here, is emphasizing how this particular sutta is a kind of a commentary on the previous Brahmanical traditions. And so he's undertaking something like a Brahmanical training, course of training. So he memorized the teaching. This is a recommended way, if you want to develop, you should first show up for a teaching, and then learn it and memorize it, and then practice for yourself, and then see if the result is wholesome or not. I'll invite Richard. Can you comment on this?
Thank you. I just noticed when you were showing that blue star and the
Yes.
information that Bhikkhu Sujato
Yes.
is about, where the phrase is, Agni is your teacher and I am your teacher. Well,
Yes.
Agni is fire, and if you have light, you can see. So I think it's like a play on idea, right? You can see, and through me you can see as well. You understand what I'm saying? Through
Yes.
Agni, now I know they're fire worshippers, but the reason they worship the fire is because it brings light, and it's just like it says, when you attain Sotapan, right? It's like someone who brought a torch into the darkness with those with eyes, can see, right? So I think that's like a play on ideas in this ancient, philosophical idea. Agni is your teacher and I am your, because they're both going to bring, fire is going to bring outside vision and the teacher is going to bring inside vision. If you understand what I'm saying. Anyway, it's just a thought. I might be wrong, but as I was looking at it, just occurred to me. Anyway, thank you very much for listening.
In his footnotes, Bhante Sujata has commented that many elements that we see as elements of the Dhamma teaching that we receive in Buddhism were like bits and pieces that were part of the earlier on traditions. It's just that our Buddha puts them together in a different way with added elements. So in a certain way, you could say it was because he was taking what was familiar to the spiritual seekers of his time and showing them the way to come from what they were already familiar with and to put a different kind of a framework, a different context on it, a different conceptual framework to be able to overcome the blind spot or the way in which those other teachings failed. So if we have another Buddha who would come to us in modern times, they might give a teaching that mentions a lot of ideas of scientific materialism and shows how those ideas are useful up to a certain extent, but then you can put a different concept or a different framework, a different way of looking at it to get from those that framework that everybody knows about to something which is able to lead to liberation. And it's not that it's necessary to be a scholar of Buddhism and Brahmanism and ancient history and the intellectual history of religions in order to benefit from the Dhamma. If you have guides who can help you point to that aspect of the Dhamma that you can really put in practice for yourself and put it into practice, that's the most important thing. And then at other times, it might be helpful too. If there's something in their sutras that you say, what's the point of this teaching? That I can read the words, but I don't know why this particular teaching is important. It could be that by having the benefit of looking at those who are interested in the history and scholarship, they could say, well, they put it this way because it's in a context of what was there in the culture at the time, that it was being explained in those terms. Alara Kalama replied, stay. This teaching is such that a sensible person can soon realize this tradition, meaning the tradition that Alara Kalama is teaching, with their own insight and live having achieved it. The Buddha said, I quickly memorized that teaching. As far as lip recital and oral recitation went, I spoke the doctrine of knowledge, the elder doctrine. I claimed to know and see, and so did others. Then it occurred to me, it is not solely by mere faith that Alara Kalama declares, I realize this teaching with my own insight and live having achieved it. Surely he meditates, knowing and seeing this teaching. So I approached Alara Kalama and said to him, Reverend Kalama, to what extent do you say you've realized this teaching with your own insight? When I said this, he declared the dimension of nothingness. I'll pause here for Bhante Sujata's note about nothingness. In the earlier text, the dimension of nothing is said to be the best of four perceptions. It was a favored meditation among Brahmin contemplatives. There's not a direct equivalent in Brahmanical text. It can be seen in the light of this passage in the Chandogya Upanishad, illustrating how divinity is too subtle for normal perception. The teacher, breaking the kernel of a seed, asked the student, what do you see there? The answer is nothing. There's a similar statement in the Sutta Nipata. One sees nothing at all. It so happens recently that I have been reading some articles by teachers who are trying to reconcile the modern teachings of Vedanta Hinduism with the teachings of Buddhism as far as the nature of consciousness. And they find the consciousness in the Vedanta to be something that, like, the more you look for it, the more you can't find it. It's like an ultimate mystery, or it's sort of like where, like, the mind is able to know all of the experiences and that befall an individual, or all of the objects that are able to be known by an individual are known by means of this consciousness. But if you try to turn the mirror around and to see the consciousness itself, you can't find it. It's like a disappearing object. Or you could say those who were seeking for an atta, or a soul, or something that's within a person, which is sort of that part of a human person, which is connected to the supreme divinity, to the Brahma, to the highest Brahma realm. You can search and search and search, like, where is this mustard seed somewhere deep within me that is connected to the divine, and they can never find it. So that's one kind of a way that, like, this dimension of the nothingness is like a secret keyhole of invisibility, that you can sort of like go into this keyhole and come out the other side into the divinity, or something like that. There's a whole other much more rational set of meditation practices that are given in the immaterial attainments, that where one progressively, like, there's objects that you can see, and you eliminate the material objects and experience space, and then you eliminate from your awareness the space, and then so, like, the mind is aware of its object and the object of space, and then so in this duality of the knowing faculty and the object which is known, then you eliminate the object which is known, and you just have the knowing faculty, and then you eliminate that knowing faculty, and you have nothingness. So these things can be experienced by meditators. Kola and Sharanya.
Ayya, I had a couple of, I had a question that has nagged me for a while, and this perhaps has to do more with Hinduism than Buddhism. And that is, in Hinduism, there's the Brahma, yes, as known as the creator, but then there's also the concept of Brahman, right? Which, when I have read the Majjhima Nikaya, the sounds awfully like the description of Nibbana.
Yes.
So my question is Nibbana and Brahman the same?
No. Not the same.
Because Brahman is supposed to be this underlying entity that can be described with words, but is supposed to be our ultimate destination. My understanding of Hinduism from just my family and what I've read. How is that different from Nibbana?
If you turn your sound down, then it won't get an echo when I answer you. the seeking the Brahman, that ultimate reality that one can experience in meditation, which is considered not only in Hinduism but in many traditions, there's something like similar to that, where like the small egotistical self is lost or transformed because it becomes submerged or integrated into an idea of something which is infinite, both infinite in every dimension. What the Buddha determined in his quest is that there was still some clinging to a self, even when becoming one with the Brahman in that highest sense. So it's like the small narrow self is wiped out, but then one is unified with an infinitely extended self, something like that. And what the Buddha is saying is that there is no level of seeking to identify anything at all with the self that doesn't lead to grasping, craving, clinging, the cycle of rebirth. So one can come to a heavenly realm, which is very lofty and far away from dukkha, but that is still subjected to rebirth. It's still something that's conditioned and created. So what the ultimate goal of Buddhism is this cessation or this extinguishment, wherein any kind of trying to become something has fallen away, and any kind of clinging or grasping after anything has fallen away, and any concern about a notion of identity has fallen away. So that then the fuel or the energy which is bringing us around the cycle of rebirth is completely used up, and one has got that complete freedom. That's the best I can explain it, just at this moment.
That was a very good explanation. Thank you.
Okay. Shmita.
Yeah, so if we come to the traditions that use Nibbana as a meditation object itself, is there not a certain sense of clinging to it as an object? Like there are traditions that use Nibbana as an object of meditation.
No. At the very end, when one is like very, when one has obtained a stream entry and has had some type of a glimpse or some type of a clue about what liberation is, about what Nibbana is, and all the more so as one progresses through the training, and that idea becomes more clear and something that can be seen, then there can still be some kind of a grasping or reaching, a clinging to Nibbana. So then you understand the peace and freedom, which is nibbana. But as long as you want it, you can't have it. So the wanting nibbana creates a certain kind of a restlessness or an instability, which then becomes an obstacle to you. But when the wanting is let go completely, then it's then that nibbana can be realized. That's one of the ways that it's taught about. So then there is definitely a contemplation that's given. The Girimananda Sutta has a very lovely expression, and in several other places, about the contemplation of nibbana. This is peaceful, this is sublime. That is the complete cessation of all formations, that is to say, nibbana. And so that is a lovely and helpful meditation that a person can do, especially when one can see, like, even like meditating on the breath, for example, or meditating on the body, that the breath is kind of a distraction, because the breath is like always changing, and it's so, in and out, in and out. It's always, it's not as stable an object as we want, in order to allow the mind to become very still and stable. And so then, if it's possible to then just ignore the in-out breathing, and then just turn the mind towards the nibbana element, then you get this completely stabilized object, and able to have a very still, peaceful meditation, which can provide a very useful standpoint for the arising of wisdom. So that's my understanding of that. But it is true that, as you said, somebody can think of nibbana and have craving for it. But if you still have craving for it, you haven't fully realized it yet. But when you get tired of craving and you just stop, then it can be possible to realize. Praranda?
Do we have time, Ayya, or I can ask the question some other time?
I had the idea that this sutta would go over 2 weeks. So I do want to maybe come to a little bit further down the line, so that we come to a little bit of a logical stopping point. What is your question? I'll see if I can answer it quickly.
It was about the last part that you read, where like the object disappears, and then the knowing disappears, and then there's nothingness. So I was just trying to reconcile it in my head with one of the other teachings that the Buddha offers, like for progressing on the path. Like when there's seeing, it's only seeing. When there's knowing, it's only knowing. So I was just hoping whether you could elaborate on that. So is like knowing also just a stage in between, and then we have to surpass that to go into nothingness?
Let me see if I can integrate that back into the sutta. Anything at all that can be experienced can become a trigger for the mind to get involved in fabrications. In particularly, like the fabrication of different perceptions, or the fabrication of different intentions, the fabrication of different thoughts. And those fabrications are, in a way, almost a kind of a calamity, if we get stuck and trapped and continuously churning around and around, and the mind can't stop spinning around fabricating. If you ever meet somebody who's mentally ill, I've had some friends who were mentally ill, and And they're really like, can be like the victims of this mind fabricating in certain ways, and they're powerless to stop it. And so they really can feel themselves a victim. But all of us, in a way, are victims of this fabricating mind. So when one is able to let in, the scene is just the scene, and no further fabrication after that, just stop with the seeing, that's a kind of a freedom. If something is experienced or known, then it's just known, just as it is, in a simplest way. And then the further fabricating mind doesn't have to keep on churning it. And so that is something that can be experienced along the way. And so that's a good thing. The dimension of nothingness. So, well, let me just read along a little bit. Maureen, you have a hand up? Okay. Let me read a little bit further and then I'll call on Maureen. It occurred to me, it's not just Alara Kalama who has faith, energy, mindfulness, immersion, and wisdom. These are some the factors of awakening, good qualities of a practitioner. The Buddha said, the Bodhisattva said, I too have these things. Why don't I make an effort and realize the same teaching that Alara Kalama says he has realized with his own insight? I quickly realized that teaching with my own insight and lived having achieved it. So I approached Alara Kalama and said to him, Reverend Kalama, is it up to this point that you realize the teaching with your own insight and declare having achieved it? I have, Reverend. The word that is translated here as Reverend is called Awuso. That's like a peer-to-peer kind of thing. If I'm talking to my friend, I could call my friend Awuso if they're a fellow monastic. You could say like brother or sister. I too, Reverend, have realized the teaching with my own insight up to this point and live having achieved it. And then Alara Kalama responds, we are fortunate, Reverend, so very fortunate to see a venerable such as yourself as one of our spiritual companions. So the teaching that I've realized with my own insight and declare having achieved it, you've realized with your own insight and dwell having achieved it. The teaching that you've realized with your own insight and dwell having achieved it, I've realized with my own insight and declare having achieved it. So the teaching that I know, you know. The teaching that you know, I know. I am like you, you are like me. Come now, Reverend, we should both lead this community together. That's how my teacher, Alara Kalama, placed me, his student, on the same position as him and honored me with lofty praise. Then it occurred to me, this teaching doesn't lead to disillusionment, dispassion, cessation, peace, insight, awakening, and extinguishment. It only leads as far as rebirth in the dimension of nothingness, realizing that this teaching was inadequate. I left disappointed. I think that will be the dramatic moment that we'll leave off this week and pick up again next week. The Buddha must have been able to remember from his past lifetimes. The Bodhisattva perhaps remembered and knew that in a past lifetime that he had dwelt in the dimension of nothingness, having experienced this kind of meditation in the past, and knowing that it was not the end, not the final solution, but just another turning of the wheel of rebirth. I'll call on Maureen.
Well, you know how I feel about these things already. I just feel that the idea of self is a fabrication. And that, to me, the rebirth was in the culture. And I, once you let go of there being a rebirth and all that there is you looking at things as they really are, you get sparks of the peace of nibbana. And that's how I see it. But I don't want to cause too much trouble.
As I thank you.
Yeah.
And there is a way that rebirth is a fabrication. I think the way it's taught in our tradition is if you fabricate a rebirth, then you get to have a rebirth. And if you don't fabricate a rebirth, then you don't have to have one. And you can get to have the kind of rebirth that you fabricate for yourself. So if you feel that you deserve to go to hell, to be punished for your sins, you may be reborn in hell, and you can stay there for as long as you have fabricated that you feel you deserve to stay there. If you love this human life and want more human life, then you can have that. My mother was a Catholic, and she wanted to be with God in heaven. She was extremely good. I think you could say well, not an official saint of the Catholic Church, but I felt quite sure that she was going to get what she wanted, and that she did get to be with God in heaven, because her life, especially in her later years, was really dedicated in that way. And so that was what she fabricated, and that's what she got. I'll call on Richard.
Thank you, Ayya. Even though he translates this as rebirth, if you look at the Pali, there's no rebirth in there. It says just to go up and exist up to that level. You're just going to that level of existence. And akinchana doesn't technically mean nothingness. It means that you're no longer stuck in the 6 dhatus. Dhatu is usually translated as element, but that's not a good translation. That's influenced by the modern world and science. It really just means state. So earth is a state of solidity. Water is a state of liquidity. These are states, and that's why nibbana itself, the nibbana dhatu, it's a state. It's a state of mind that the Buddha is in when you get there. So when you get to akinchana, because you've entered into the formless realm, but the first part of the formless realm is the space that those elements, what they call elements, but they're not really elements, those states of matter, you might say, can exist in. And cognition, the one above that, is the cognition of those elements. Okay? Just like when you look at the 5 khandhas, cognition at the end, Buddha describes in certain suttas, is cognition of the other 4. Cognition of form, cognition of sensation, cognition of perception, cognition of sankhara, okay? So it's the same way with so you've risen above that. You're no longer cognizing these out. And so to the mind that experiences that for the first time, because you're used to this, right? It's like, oh, it's nothing, it's not, but it's not really nothingness. It just means you've gone beyond this. So now to get back to nibbana, in describing all these different jhanas and formless attainments, the reason that the Buddha rejects them is because he sees they're limited in some way, that it's not actually nibbana. It's when you're in this state, it seems very wonderful and blissful, right? But then you come out of the state. That shows it's temporary. It's subject to the 3 characteristics, right? And because it's temporary, you long, oh, I wish I was back in there. But then you get to the point where even being in that is a problem. And that's why let me go beyond that one then, from going to a kinshana, let me go on to neither perception or non-perception, because you're finding even a slight amount of disturbance in those levels. And therefore, Buddha reasoned for himself in all these cases that, no, this is not nibbana. This is not final, freedom from samsara. It's just another way of existing. Now, another reason why it's not a rebirth is because Buddha says very specifically there's 4 types of rebirth. Beings born of eggs, of water, beings born of eggs, beings born of the womb, and then mono-made body. And mono-made takes you as far as the form realm of Brahma. But when you go beyond that realm, you still have a body, but Buddha says there's 3 types of bodies. There's still a body in the formless realm, but it's not a birth body. It's like just a spontaneous arising existence sort of experience. So, these things are can be a little complicated. And going back to the discussion about Brahman, thinking you're going to become one with Brahman, well, my conclusion on that is that these sages, they're going into these formless realms. And there's kind of a feeling when you go in there, like oneness, like when you go into boundlessness, which people call infinity, like you feel like one with everything, like infinite, And so that's beyond the Brahma God realm. So that's why, the God is falling out of that realm, right? At the beginning of a universe, the first being to fall out is the first Brahma. And then other Brahmas fall, and they see he's already there, and he sees that he wanted to have other people, so he thinks, oh, I'm creating these people from my mind by thinking about them, and they're falling as, oh, he's already there, he must be creating us. Buddha describes that in a certain sutta, that this is like a mistaken idea. And all beings end up in that boundless realm at the contraction or whatever of a universe. But because their minds are not ready for such a thing, they're kind of just almost like sleeping there. And Buddha says that they're maintained, if I remember correctly, just by the nutriment is just sort of like the bliss of that realm. But they're not really. It's not like a yogi bringing himself to that realm.
Sutta.
Okay, so. Anyways, I just wanted to make those points because it might clarify a lot of different issues for people if my explanation is understandable, which it may not be. Anyways, thank you for listening.
I love what you mentioned about the different dhatus being the qualities of materiality, and I would like to just have a little tip about what we're going to come to next week is that even these meditation states are impermanent. They're conditioned. It's depending on making the effort of meditation. And they come to an end when we come out of our time of meditation and re-enter to regular reality. And so these states are kind of the same thing as the chickens and the goats and the bondservants, is that they're subject to impermanence. And so then level by level by level, we keep looking for something that like is worthy to cling to because it's permanent, but you can't find anything at all to cling to. You can't find anything that's got that quality of permanence such that you can cling to that and really be safe. And so that's what we shall develop next week in the continuation of the sutta. I thank everybody for your engaging with these ideas and for your practice and your efforts.